What's up, world? It's your boy, the Beerded brother. Beer, stuff inside of it. This is a black ass can. Back at it again with another episode of season 2 of the Beerded tasting. So if you've been tuning in, you know every episode's been fire. Well, it's just got even hotter in here. I got a very good social media friend that I've been following her for a while now with her business, Pull-Up Cards, which is right here. This lovely package right here, which is just gives. Of course, she's got one, so I wasn't even worried about it. But I'm talking too much. But tell the world who you are.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Liz. I'm the founder of Pull-Up Card Game, an unapologetic drinking card game for Black alumni. So for Black alumni, by Black alumni. And I am based in the DMV area. Been in the DMV for about 8 years.
Okay.
And proud Black alumna of the University of Georgia. Go Dogs.
There you go. Still riding high on that national championship win?
Yes, long time
there you
coming.
Go. There you
Literally underdogs. We didn't think we were going to win until, fourth quarter.
Oh, man, there you go. And I can't say that too loud because fiance is Roll Tide, so I got to be quiet. I don't want to get jumped.
Okay.
I don't want to get jumped once I step outside the studio. So, darn Georgia, foiled us again. But what kind of brought you up to the DMV area from UGA?
Yeah, so I went to UGA. Like many college students, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I came in undecided. I was undecided, but I thought I wanted to be an orthodontist. And then they were like, so about these science classes. And I said, oh, never mind.
Science.
Science for teeth. So ended up majoring in poli-sci. But then I was like, I'm taking poli-sci at the University of Georgia. Not a good idea. So dropped poli-sci when I realized that I was being taught political science by these Southern white men. Ended up doing international affairs. It was a little better, but it wasn't giving me what I needed. So then I added public relations. So this is just a long way of saying graduated from UGA with degrees in public relations and international affairs, came to DC for a full-time job in public relations. But now I am in diversity, equity, and inclusion because, PR was cool. It's taught me a lot that I've been able to leverage in my business. But my passion was really more so about representation and the retention of Black and brown people in the workplace.
Okay. Lord knows we need that in almost every arena for the most part that's not already dominated by us some sort of way on a certain level. But I definitely wanted to get into, you were a member of the Gathering Spot in DC. Is that like a co-working space, and how did that kind of like go into your story and get into where you are today?
Yeah, so the Gathering Spot is really, really dope. Founded by Ryan Wilson and I feel like a few other folks, graduates of Georgetown, actually. And yes, it is a Black community space. I would say it's more than a co-working space, but it's a Black-owned community space. Started out in Atlanta and just really took off from there. So you've probably seen Kamala Harris, Stacey Abrams, T.I., all of these really big heavy hitters hosting conferences, panels, discussions, and community building events in the space. And I think with some of that name recognition, but really the folks who are a part of the space doing dope things, but wanting a space where they could come together and be their true authentic selves, they've been expanding. So DC was their second place where I believe they expanded, and I was able to become a founding member, which basically is just a fancy way of saying I was one of the first people to join the gathering spot in DC in 2019. And it's amazing. Like visually, it just looks amazing. But when you're there, you're around a whole bunch of Black people doing what they do best in their different areas of work. I've been at the gathering spot working and like on a phone call, and then like a president of an organization walks by and is like, oh, I heard you talking about your card game. Like, can you talk to me a little bit about this? Here's my business card. Stay in touch. That's the type of space that the gathering spot is. And I remember in the beginning, I had a game night there with gathering spot members. So I'm really grateful to be a member and looking forward to, you know, being able to leverage that network moving forward as I try to scale Pull-Up Card Game.
Gotcha. As you were talking, you probably heard me open my can of beer because, of course, it's a beer podcast. Who am I to not open a beer on my beer podcast? So I'm starting out with a local favorite of mine. It's called Sterling. It's a double IPA from Living Waters. So pretty much a double IPA is just a stronger version of the traditional IPA. So this is going to sit about 8% or so. It's going to be really pretty hoppy. Depends on the ingredients because you can get different things. With this one, they have hops called Simcoe, CTZ, and Chinook. So it's going to be real tropical, little pineapple on there. So this is a great summer beer. You sitting at the beach. You playing pull up with your homeboys, your homegirls. Try to get toe up from the flow up because we'll get into that game a little bit because it has a little bit of red and white in it. She went from UGA. She is now reps the red and white as Delta. I was going to make the sound, but again, I have no space. I like my life, and I like it to be relatively unharmed. So I will leave that to the Deltas. And so I have many family members that are Deltas. So you fit in right in with my family. So and so talking about those gatherings, hey let's go. But talk about gatherings and things like that. You went from just writing down 20 cards to now someone in Nashville playing your game. So like dive into that story a little bit. Like when did you know this is like gonna be a thing?
Yeah. So, and I really appreciate the way you frame that. Like, yes, because it did start out with 20 note cards. And then now, to your point, like you're in Nashville, I'm in the DMV. We've been connected on social media, and I have the opportunity to talk about, you know, how the game is expanding. So that just really made me feel good. So I just wanted to say thank you first. But yeah, so a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I am in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. But when I was in college, I was also a resident assistant. So this is just a way of saying, like, I know how to break the ice. If I can have a conversation with someone about race, I can make a game fun to talk actually about fun topics. And if I could be a resident assistant in an all-girls dorm and get girls to come to my programs when freshman year you're not trying to do any of that, I can come up with something for myself to engage adults. So pandemic, I feel like, was a prime opportunity for a lot of Black entrepreneurs to have the time to kind of implement some of their ideas. Right before the pandemic, I had like a gathering with some of my friends from UGA because every year during the holidays, we come together and we hang, we chill, we eat, we drink, and we just catch up. And for whatever reason, like we just always want to see how people are doing. And our connection is the fact that we went to UGA together and we were Black and we had some shared experiences. So this one time I was like, you know what? Let me just like switch things up a bit. Like we always do the same thing. Like at this point, what is year 7? We do the same thing. We play Uno, we play Taboo, we eat, we drink, and nothing is wrong with that. But let me switch it up a bit. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write down some note cards and this will be just kind of an icebreaker once everybody comes. An icebreaker turned into hours of conversation, reminiscing, people taking their cameras out, laughing, joking, singing. And I realized, like, this is the secret sauce. There's something about the Black alumni experience and the amount of pride that we have because we've overcome so much. So like whether you went to a PWI, you overcame being a minority, you know, on campus. Whether you went to an HBCU, you overcame the obstacles of, you know, HBCUs really trying to make space, real estate, like, you know, making space for them in this world. And when you overcome an obstacle, that brings you closer together. And you want to talk about it and you want to share your story. So once I realized I had the secret sauce, I was like, okay, whatever. That was fun. But my friend, one of my best friends, she was like, Liz, I think you should make this into a card game. And she's one of those friends where she's not going to let up. So I was just like, yeah, cool. That sounds fun.
Okay, girl.
Okay, girl. I just wanted to make some note cards. And she followed up and she was like, no, seriously, Liz, so I talked to you about this card game idea. Like, I want you to really do this. So then I'm an Aries. You don't got to tell me twice. You might have to, you know, let's do it. And then I was able to go from 20 to 100 questions, but I knew I had my biases. So I wanted to get feedback. I did focus groups with people from other colleges. We hopped on Zoom meetings, getting their, you know, feedback on what made sense, what was clear, what was funny. Because I know Black folks will let you know if this is not good or not. They'll be like, no, that ain't it.
Right.
And then went into design, worked with a fellow UGA alumni on the design of the cards, and then finally finding a manufacturer to print the cards. So by January of 2021, I physically had the cards, but I had already opened up pre-orders in November of 2020. And here we are today. You know, it's March 2022. And like you said, you're in Nashville playing the game.
Oh, yeah. And was honored to do an ad for the game. Showed my sister and her best friend in there. We all went to PWIs. And so experienced that. So it's funny you mentioned that. I definitely want to dive into the PWI and HBCU conversation a little bit. But before that, just kind of just reading the website, you mentioned joy is resistance. What does that mean for people that might not really understand? Like, okay, like me having fun doesn't mean I'm resisting anything. Everybody has fun. It's like, how do you view that in your life for specifically Black people and working in DEI?
Yeah, so when I working in the DEI space, June of 2020, that entire summer was a lot because for whatever reason, some people had a reawakening to the injustices faced by Black and brown people. So all of a sudden, even though we as Black people know we've been facing this for centuries, you had an influx of people not only having awareness because they had to see what happened to George Floyd. That was their breaking point. All of a sudden you had everybody asking, what do I do? Oh my gosh, this is happening. This is what y'all been talking about this whole time. What do I do? I was so annoyed by that question.
Right.
So annoyed. Yeah, it really frustrated me. And because the reason is it centered the needs of white people and people who were not Black and people who, you know, were not necessarily experiencing this on the same level. Mm-hmm. You want me to tell you what to do. Sure, that's my job, right? But it just was very frustrating for, you know, when you've been doing this work for a while. So I wanted to look at it differently. Black people, what do you need in this moment? Not white people, what do you need for me to bring you up to speed so you can feel better about yourselves? But no, Black people, what do we need? And
hold on, you froze.
I believe that for some of us, yes, we need change, we need action, we need to see policies and practices, but also we need to be able to focus on ourselves. We need to be able to prioritize self-care. And I feel like being able to center joy and tell our stories in a space where we don't have to be censored, where we don't have to feel judged, that is an act of resistance. In light of everything that we are experiencing, to still be able to enjoy ourselves, and yes, even with a drink or two, that is resistance. And we've seen that over time where, you know, we may have been enslaved, but we used our hands and feet to now create what's now known as stepping. And yeah, you know, civil rights era, we may have been going through so much, but we've always through time found a way to leverage joy as a form of resistance. And so people might think that sounds silly, like a drinking game. Are you kidding me? But no, we deserve to celebrate Black excellence, and it's okay to pull up to Black excellence. So that's kind of how I make the connection.
Okay, no, that's awesome. Like, because now I mentioned it, I kind of can see that for like beer. Like me, it's just like, no, if you read into the history of beer, it starts in Africa. It started Black women, African women were the brewers. They ran that game, then made it up to Egypt. And then, you know, white people have it, and now everybody thinks it came from Germany, Belgium, and the Bavarian area. It's like, yeah, the game might have revolutionized up there, but like the game started in Africa. And so it's just like learning that and going through and being able to talk about beer on a higher level that's more than malt liquor, Mad Dog 2020, Bud Light, and other non-well-made beer. It's like, no, you can have access to these breweries, this craft beer and things like that, and be okay with that and enjoy it and know it came from history, came from us and things like that. So that's been the most fun thing. It's like, that's the joy I take out of it, and being able to be like, find my voice and really make an impact in the Black community for me. And so, speaking of voice, how do you think that helped amplify your voice? Do you think you'll have as big of a voice if you didn't have the game, or did you need the game to really get into the work you're doing now?
That's a really good question. So I feel like the game has definitely created a lot of different opportunities. And I also feel like whether I decided to create the game or not, I was going to find a way to amplify, you know, the stories of the Black community as well as my own voice. But I also feel like, you know, in the midst of the pandemic, you've seen a lot of folks who are just like, this 9 to 5 ain't
right.
It ain't it. And I feel like now I'm looking to the game as an opportunity to eventually make that transition from, you know, a corporate setting to doing my own thing. And so because of the game, and in my opinion, like how unique it is, like being a Black-owned drinking game, and then also being a drinking game specific to college experiences, like they call that white space in retail. And if you go into a major retailer, you're going to see drinking games. They're not created by Black people. And you're not really seeing anything specific to college. And if it is, it's like a small expansion pack to something else. So I feel like I'm really making space for something big here. But because of the game, I've been able to, you know, be in the Washington Business Journal to kind of talk about this like really unique and kind of funny innovation of a drinking game, and being in Busboys and Poets, or being a part of this Target Forward Founders Accelerator program. If it were not for the game, I would not have been in those spaces. So it's like a yes and a no. Like I was going to find a way to make my voice heard and make the voices of the Black community heard, but the game just makes it more fun.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. So, like,
stressful.
Right, you can have some laughs, have a few drinks just in case.
Yes.
You drink for happiness or you drink for sadness. Sometimes it might be both. You're just so sad you're happy, or you're so happy you're sad. Like you can drink for that and pour up with that, and it almost opens up a level of conversation you didn't realize you needed until you're conversing about it with your friends from UGA. I went to Belmont, go Bruins, here in Nashville.
Okay.
So I do have friends that went into the Black Student Association just to be able to like talk about that and have conversations that you can't have with the Chads and the Jacquelines of the world and the Sarahs that are not, they're just not going to hit the same. So creating POA, I think, is such a more powerful thing. I think beyond what we realize today, maybe we'll see it later down the road, but I think that's going to be like really cool and bring PWIs together and HBCUs together, because sometimes the Black students with PWIs and the Black students of HBCUs, they bump heads, whether it's in just jokes or shade or just straight up disrespect. And I want to kind of like talk about that because you touched on it.
Let's get into it.
So I have my feelings about it. And I'm sure you do too. No, coming from PWI, like, of course, I'll put this on wax. Everyone's heard me say this. It's like, I always think about it. I was like, what if I went to TSU or Fisk instead of Belmont? Or I stayed home with the Morehouse where my dad went and found me a Spelman woman and be another Spellhouse couple of the family, because my mom went to Spelman and my dad went to Morehouse. And they were on and off together and then got back together. And then me and my two older siblings came along. So, and none of us went to, except for my older sister, she went to Hampton. But for the most part, like me and my middle sister, we went to PWIs. So, but also on the flip side, it's like, I want to have the experiences and I don't know if I'll be doing the same thing I am doing today. I don't know if I'll be talking to Lizz of Pull Up Cards on a Saturday afternoon, on early Saturday afternoon, being a beer influencer and she being a card game producer. I don't know if I would have met my wonderful fiance if I didn't go to Belmont and move to Nashville. So it's just like give and take. And sometimes I feel like we both sides of that spectrum miss that gap and don't give each other grace. Like, I think that's like the biggest thing. I think that's like the foundation of all the issues. Like, no grace is given on either side at all. So my defense is like, you got to go where it best serves you. So if that's an HBCU, go to the HBCU, get the experience you deserve. If I need to go to Belmont because I ended up being social entrepreneurship, no other school has that. When I was in school, it was only like 5 other schools. And that was the most affordable school I can go to with that program. So it had what I needed in terms of gathering my tools and just enough of a community. But I just want to get like a overarching view of how you feel about like this PWI versus HBCU mindset.
Yeah. Whew. So definitely a lot of what you said resonates with me. And I appreciate this question because it's one of the reasons why the game is for Black alumni, period. And the goal is to bridge the gap between the experiences of students who went to PWIs and students who went to HBCUs, because you're right. Like, there is this kind of intangible divide or perception of a divide. But when you play the game, you realize we have more in common than we think. Yeah, we have some differences. Like when you get the card that says, did you dress up or down for class on Fridays? There's typically HBCU students saying, yeah, we dressed up to be on the quad, the yard, market Fridays. And PWI students are like, no, we wore our leggings and our shirts. But then if I ask you, about like getting blue jean stains on a wall at a house party, everybody can relate to that. Yeah. And that's okay. So my biggest thing is, no matter where you attended school, your Black excellence deserves to be celebrated, because we as Black graduates have overcome a bigger barrier than whether you went to a PWI or HBCU. We are increasingly graduating at higher rates from universities. And no matter where you decide to go, you have a right to go there. So HBCUs, I'm super excited to see the increase in enrollment and the increase in recognition that HBCUs deserve, because they've played a very important role in our history, and they're historically Black because we did not have access to other institutions. However, in addition to that, PWIs, Black students have a right to access that education. I went to the University of Georgia. We were desegregated in 1961. Charlene Hunter Galt and Hamilton E. Holmes, they desegregated that school for a reason. And I have a right to access that education if it's something that's right for me at the time. Now, I know a lot of students at PWIs, they grapple with this fact of like, I deserve to be here, but dang, why am I going through some of the things that I have to go through as a minority on campus? And I think that can be a very unique experience to kind of like navigate. But then at the same time, it's like people paved the way for me to go here. And I'm gonna, do what I need to do to pave the way for others to access these institutions as well. So the biggest thing is like, remember to focus on the fact that no matter where you're in school, the fact that you are in school and the fact that you are graduating is amazing, and your Black excellence deserves to be celebrated. And remember not to feed into these narratives of dividing the Black community. Like, let's bring ourselves together through these stories and let's laugh at some of those differences. But we have more in common than we think. And what I love is when I was in college, if I went to go visit an HBCU or if I, went to go visit another PWI, we all know the same drinking games, okay? So we used to pull out the flip cup, King's Cup, Circle of Death, beer pong. That brought us together. There was no conversation of why did you go here? Why did you go here? We have a drink and we kiki, and it's like all of that is behind us. So that's another reason why I want it to be a drinking game, because in addition to the conversation, like it or not, a few drinks and, a little bit of game and we're on the same page.
You almost forget about that. And you kind of forget about that. Like for me, I grew up private school from the moment first grade up until I graduated at Belmont in 2015. Private school. But I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood. I'm from Decatur, Georgia. If you listen to Big Goo-Wop, Gucci, Zone 6, like that's where I was born and raised. So like going from Decatur up to Buckhead, Sandy Springs, like the heart of Sandy Springs, like the house they filmed in ATL, that house is around the corner from my high school. Like, just to give you an idea of what kind of money was up there. So it was just like on a day-to-day basis going from the ritzy white kids to these other Black kids that didn't even have the financial ability to get to even sniff around these schools. It created kind of a identity crisis for me where like I don't know where I belong, because when I go to the white kids, I'm the Blackest person they know. I go to my neighborhood, other Black kids, neighborhood kids, they ask me if I wish I was white and things like that. And being able to have to deal with that, like it took me till about my mid-20s to be like, I was supposed to do what I did, and this is where I can become better, but still be unapologetically Black and still down for the culture. And I wish this game existed when I stepped on the Belmont, because that would have been such a different experience for me. But I understand that's what I needed to go through to get to where I am today. So like being able at 30, being like, okay, like, that's the journey I was supposed to take, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But like having something like that game will be like huge, and that's part of like the mystique. I think you and I couldn't even fathom football games. I think it's just going to be super big for kids that look like us that went to UGA, Belmont, Vanderbilt, Harvard, Yale. They have this little piece of the culture that like will still keep them glued to the culture and make them be a part of the culture without, quote unquote, being in the culture, if that makes sense. And so with that, kind of want to just keep like going into that. It's just like, it was funny you mentioned like the dress up and dress down. I laughed because I was watching the interview you did with a podcast, the Swirl podcast. Sorry.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so that was just funny. And it was just like, yeah, no, like them white folks ain't dress up for shit. Like, unless they really had something to do. Like, if they did have, like, I went to Belmont's music school. So if they didn't have like their senior recital or some sort of recital they were in, they weren't dressing up. They were in their flip flops, Sperry's, shorts, t-shirts, and it's December. It's like, all right, that's what we're doing. That's what's up. And like, we had some kids that would be barefoot walking on campus. That's another conversation for another day because I can make a whole episode on this.
There's always that day of the year, like, okay, connect with people who don't have shoes by not wearing shoes for the day. Okay.
How, what? Why I gotta have my feet out? Like, I'm an athlete. I got
not wearing shoes in the showers. We could go on and
right.
on.
I was like, I play basketball, so I got basketball feet. No, nobody wants to see that. Like, no one's trying to see all that. And like, but and things like that. So it's just like some things is just, it's funny because it's like we came across the question of the you remember when you had no AC? I was like, not at Belmont. That wouldn't happen at Belmont. But I also had to check myself. I was like, that sounds a little arrogant. Like, but also I couldn't help it. I was like, Bob Fisher, our president, wouldn't allow this to happen. Like, I was like, I don't know what it means. I never experienced no AC in my college days. And so it's just things like that. So those are always like really good talking points, kind of like, again, humanize each other. It's like, I never experienced this, you did. And I was like, that's kind of like, okay, I had nothing to do with that. But also you check yourself. You're like, oh, like people don't always live in the world I live in. And vice versa. It's like, because like you said, it's like being in PWI, you're a minority. So you experience minority things. HBCUs, you can avoid that for the most part. You get more into like the social minorities of like people like really love craft beer like me. There might not be many people at HBCUs. I hope there are. I want to be wrong, so let me know. Tell me I'm wrong when you hear this episode.
Right? You could find Black Republicans at HBCUs.
Right.
You can find a lot of stuff.
But it's like...
But we all have... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. But I was going to say, it's like, it's more than just skin deep. Ours at PWI is like, I'm 6'2", 200 plus pounds, so I stick out. Like, and I didn't play any college sports. I played sports just for fun, but I didn't play in college sports. But like, I immediately got looked at a certain way. It's like, nah. Or I was in music. I was like, no, I was history major first, which is even weirder at a music school. Then I went into social entrepreneurship. So it's just like, you have to navigate past those. And then it feels like you got to start the relationship building. Once you get past, like, hey, I'm Black, but I don't do this. I don't do that. I do this. So once we get, so it's like, it's an extra connection. So I thought that was always really interesting. And I think that's super cool.
No, I definitely agree. It's like some of these experiences, it just goes back to the fact that for adults, especially millennials, we romanticize the past, even when the past sucked. So you always used to hear like people talk about like, oh yeah, I used to eat so much ramen in college. Remember those days? And it's like, yeah, that actually sucked and they were high in sodium. But for whatever reason, now that we are beyond those points, like being able to reminisce on those days, it's hilarious. Right. So I also love, like, for example, I always get this with Howard alumni. So proud. Literally the archetype of a Howard alum. You can't touch them, right? It's like the illustrious, the better, etc. But then you pull out that card about the AC and the roaches in the rep.
Right.
They drink 3 times on that card, okay? But that does not mean their confidence wavers. And that's what I love about it. It's kind of like the intricacies of we are bonding over these like shared experiences. Some of them are a little messy. Some of these experiences are about being broke. And then some of them are, connected to Black school pride. And we're still able to bond and laugh over those things, but still having pride in where we went to school and the fact that we've graduated. So that's what I love about it. And Howard alumni are so consistent every time I play this.
Yes. Like, you don't even need the game. Like, you just mentioned somebody named Howard. Like, there's a journalist I follow for basketball, Howard Beck. I just like, I was listening to an article from Howard. Oh, what you read from Howard? Nah, it's a white dude that talks about basketball. Like, chill. I ain't even go. So, like, how would I get stuff from Howard? I didn't even go to the school. Like, relax, y'all. Not every Howard is about the university. Just a fun fact. Just throwing that out there. But like, yeah, I love this card. I just pulled up another one. It was like, name famous Black alumni from your respective school. It was just like, I know two. Kind of. Like, it was like,
depending on how big your group is, you might be okay. Because it's like, okay, hopefully this don't circle back on me. But for us, it's a little more than one would think. But yes, this is another thing where it's like HBCUs, y'all better lean into all this history and you better win this round. But I've also played with some people at HBCUs and I'm like, I know more prominent Black folks from your HBCU than you do. What's going on?
Right.
What is going on?
Did you go there? Or you say you go there? At least I know my two alumni that are famous, that are Black. I went to school with them.
And then, PWIs, sometimes you start to name people where it's like, they are prominent to you, but not everybody knows. So I might throw in the name of the two people who desegregated UGA when I'm like starting to run out of people, like Charlene Hunter Galt. And then everybody's like, who? I was like, yeah, she desegregated in school, so she's prominent.
It counts. There's one dude that played in the NBA, black dude, Ian Clark. Shouts out Ian. And Karan Johnson, he played over in New Zealand. So that's like,
it's a problem when you sticking to sports, but
right. Oh yeah.
Back that later.
Yeah. That's a whole part 2, 3, maybe even 4. That's just like we could get into it, but I was like, I got a couple things to do today.
Yes.
But yeah, like I definitely do agree with you. It's like we sometimes get caught on the topical stuff. We don't get to the nooks and crannies of what goes on. Because at the end of the day, like some injustice happens to me. I went to Belmont. That does not matter and probably will not matter. That's another unfortunate thing. But it's like, but at the end of the day, people are going to be talking about me being a Black man in America, or you or my fiance being a Black woman in America is some sort of injustice. Doesn't matter if she went to Alabama, doesn't matter. You went to UGA. At the end of the day, it's a Black woman and a Black man, and we kind of forget that. So we do need a good glue, a good reminder to be like, yo, we in this together. We might be taking different paths, but we're here to reach the same goal, which is equity, and power and equality and things like that. And just honestly, just justice. Like we ain't asked for much. Like something happens to us, make sure the person that does the thing to us gets punished the way it's supposed to be punished, and it not be reversed. When we do it, it's a problem. When they do it, it's like, they're trying to get their life together. Boys will be boys. He's got a great future. We can't fuck it up. Who are we to do that? But that happens. That happens, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
But I saw that you had a black beer. We were all talking off camera about that. I was like, you haven't cracked that open. So you.
Yes. So you gave me this recommendation because it's already hard finding Black-owned, wine and spirits, let alone beer more specifically. So I remember a while back, I had asked you for a list and you gave me a few recommendations. And so I was able to find, I think it was a 4-pack of Rhythm and Beauty Black Lager by Soul Mega, and take a look at this can. The artwork is beautiful, very gorgeous, clear. And I'm not going to lie, I haven't opened it. One, because it's really pretty. Two, it's pretty big. Three, it's okay. I mean, it's not too early on a Saturday, but I'm not sure if I like black lager. I've not tried this yet, basically. I'm more of a, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, but I'm more of a like Blue Moon, Shock Top, citrus, Belgian beer. And so I don't know if I'm going to like a black lager, but I still want to try it.
Do you drink coffee?
6% alcohol. No, I'm a tea drinker.
Tea drinker. Okay. So, this is going to be like kind of like that. It's going to be a little roasty. So it's going to have some like roastiness to it, a little bit of malt because it's a lager. So it's going to be kind of sweet, but it's going to have this like roastiness. Is like the malt has been oven roasted. It's going to be that. It's not going to be hoppy. It's going to be, might be a little bit, but like nothing like super bitter. You're like, oh no, like IPAs would be like that. If you had a black IPA, I'd be a little worried for it because it's like roasty and hoppy, but this one's going to be sweet, roasty, really easy to drink, and it's going to be surprising. And that's the beauty of beer. It might sound like something you don't like, but you take that first sip, you're like, oh shit, this is not what I thought it was at all. But that's the fun thing about it. You get to just test things out and kind of go in. You kind of go in with a more open mind, and the community is way more open. We're willing to like talk about it. Like if you talk to the right person about beer and you say a certain word, they'll send them to this whole nerd moment. And you're gonna be like, I have no idea what you're saying, but I'm invested because you're invested. You just got hyped because you're like, oh, you said this. Let me tell you about this. You're like, I don't know what that means. I feel like you might be disrespecting me, but I don't know. But you're hype about it, so I'm hype about it if you're hype about it. And so, like, I think you might enjoy a black lager. It's an easy drink. Even though it sits at 6, you said like 6-something%. It's gonna be an easy 6%. Drink, and so it might sneak up on you. That's that percentage range where it's like you have like 2 or 3, you're like kind of quick. You're like, oh, maybe I should sit down somewhere for a minute. So,
yes.
And speaking
this is good to know. I'm gonna give it a chance, clearly, because it's black owned and it looks amazing.
Oh yeah, I was like, and their Soulmate is good. I've had it when I was up in Pittsburgh for a black beer festival, and so I'll send you some information. I think it'd be a really cool idea for you to get involved. I'll send you the information about that festival. But
thank you.
Oh, of course. Like I'm definitely trying to connect everyone through education, conversation, all that stuff. And so I forgot what I was going to say. That happens a lot, but it's fine, people. I'm okay. I'm getting it together. Talk about ownership. You're just saying like it's not a lot of activity going on in terms of ownership in craft beer. It's only 1% right now. That's even including other people of color. It's 1%. So if you even want to stretch the other ethnicity, it does get higher than 1%. And so being able to have people like me and this festival, it really just shows that there is a market for us. So breweries, make sure you start hiring black people. Stop slapping rap lyrics on your beer and slapping a black person on your beer and saying you for the people when you don't even have a single Darius or Daquan roaming your tap room working, not just drinking your beer, working and doing something important. That this festival and Empiring are just simple ways to get involved. And so that kind of segues into my next question about just representation in games. It's just like, how can games just bring more of our culture into their games, or do we need people like Lizz or Poe to keep coming out with games? Because I think of Guess Who. Now, I used to play that all the time as a child. Now I realize there was no brother or sister on the damn, not a single black person on that game. It's just like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So it's just like, how important is it to have that representation in games as well as in everything else?
Yeah, so I think that it is very important. I need to pull up my stats right now, but like leisure and games is very important to the Black community. Right now, I'm trying to get together my pitch deck for the end of my Target experience. So I have all of these stats to kind of prove why my game should eventually be on Target shelves. But I think representation is important in addition to ownership, because nothing is worse than when you, like you said with your examples with beer, like when a predominantly white owned beer company tries to speak to the community all of a sudden because it's summer of 2020 and they put a black box on their social media and now they gotta scramble to do something. Or like a Bath and Body Works, their Black History Month candle display, not created by like Black people.
And it's just the regular products and kente cloth. Not to interrupt you, but I was like, it's just.
Oh my gosh!
I just saw
I think what I'm getting at
yesterday
is sometimes
for
representation without true ownership.
Now you just go put a kente cloth on it and say Happy Black History Month.
Yeah. So sometimes representation without true ownership and having like a seat at the table, it's just performative, and nobody wants that. And so that's why I think it's really important for me. We're not just a drinking card game for Black alumni. We're a drinking card game for Black alumni created by Black alumni. So it's going to be more authentic. And right now, like can you think like, what is a drinking card game that you can like think of top of mind? That's not like a flip cup, but maybe like a dedicated card game for drinking. If you could think of one.
King's Cup.
King's Cup. We're not even going to give them any airtime because this is about Pope cards. But if you were to Google drinking card games and like whatever comes up, click on their website, you don't see us. Like,
not at all.
So it's not even like you're even trying to be representative. So I think it's important for us to fill this white space, as they call it, because Black people want to play games. And by default, we're like, okay, well, since there's not really anything that speaks to us, I'll buy this really generic drinking game that doesn't necessarily speak to my experiences. But I guess it doesn't matter because I'm just trying to drink anyway. But imagine being able to go down the aisle and be like, oh, snap, this is a drinking game and it's actually genuinely for me, not just some random game created by someone who knows nothing about my experience. That's dope. And I feel like, right now in Target, there are maybe only 5 Black-owned card games, maybe 6. Phase 10, which people didn't know was Black-owned, it's now owned by Mattel, but Phase 10, created by Ken Johnson in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Shout out to him, probably filthy rich. Then, of course, we know Black Card Revoked, Culture Tags, Brilliant or BS, and Culture Karaoke. If I'm not mistaken, we have 5 Black-owned games on Target shelves. If you walk down that game aisle, it's packed. There's definitely space for us to be on the shelves because we want to play the games, but we're just buying the Uno and playing spades by default because that's what's been available to us. So now imagine as you introduce games, not only with the representation, but like created with you in mind, not just to slap diversity on a website, but actually created for you to speak to your experiences. That hits different. And I think that's very important. So I'm looking forward to seeing more Black game makers in the space. And I'm focusing on Target because that's the cohort I'm in right now. But there are a lot of Black game makers really making a way and like making their cards available online and really doing the damn thing. And I'm really proud of them. And I want to thank, people like the founders and the creators of Black Card Revoked for making us realize like, oh, I can make my own game and it's okay to be unapologetically Black. It's not like now I have to create a game that is for everybody. Like I can be successful and still focus on my community. That's okay. So that's what I'm excited about with Poet Card Game. I'm not trying to sell out. I might have expansion packs and, make slight pivots, but I'm not going to forget where I've come from, what inspired the game, and who's been in support of the game since, and that's Black people.
Right, and that's who you've been going after, so I definitely appreciate that. And I just been like reading everything about that, of just like representation, how like easy certain aspects can get missed. Like in video games, hair. In like playing basketball games, you create a player, it's two hairstyles, a trash fade with crooked hairline and a 1970s porn star afro. And I feel like you know exactly what I'm talking about. But like there's a professor, I forget where they're from, but they're making like an encyclopedia of like digital hairstyles, of like current hairstyles, black hairstyles that don't look creepy. They don't look like a hot mess. They actually look like, oh, I've actually seen someone with that hairstyle. Oh, I've seen some, like my homegirl wears that, like their hair like that. My homeboy has his hair like that. And then it's like you get download into the game. It's just like you kind of don't think about it unless it's just like something you set out to do. But someone that's casual like gamer or like have friends that casually game, they brought it up to me. I was like, oh yeah, they really don't be fucking with us when it comes to the hair. Huh. And then I read that article, I was like, oh man, we really didn't have any kind of advocacy in that space. And kind of talk about that as like you go to all these different spaces, and it reminds me of that Denzel quote. He was talking about culture when it comes to like certain directors directing certain movies. He was like, you could probably get Patrick Swayze to produce this movie, but it's not going to be the same if this guy does it, and blah, blah, blah. He's like, you can't get a white dude to produce a black culture movie. He's like, you could probably do it and it'll probably be decent, but also still hit kind of flat amongst people who will watch it versus like you get like a Ryan Coogler for Black Panther to do just a regular day or like an Issa Rae. That will be able to get the little nuances. Even if we don't have the nuances in the South, it's more West Coast nuances. You kind of get it. You're like, oh, but this is how it looks like in Washington. This is how it looks like in Nashville or Atlanta. And kind of just talking about that is like, do we, how do we continue just like building games like yours or building upon the games that exist already? How can we as customers make sure we continue to see ourselves? Because I see some of these cars, I'm like, okay, like, what do you look for when somebody reaches out to you about a car submission? Like, I know you get car submission and you have that on your website. Like, what do you look for from like, I don't think we need to use that car because that's a little too niche or too broad, to like, oh, this car needed to be made yesterday. Like, what's your kind of filtration process of selecting cards?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, the main thing that I'm looking for is it connected to the Black experience, and does it give you nostalgia? Does it give you that feeling of like, oh yeah, I remember those moments? Like I had one of my line sisters in one of my pro fights, they submitted a card that was kind of like pull up if you like used to skip the line to get in or whatever, or pull up if you used to pay someone to skip the line because you refused to wait. Things like that, where it's like, okay, I can think back on the nostalgia. But I feel like what I'm going to do moving forward is just like run the card by a few people before I put it in the deck. So whenever I go to a vendor marketplace, like, hey, what do you think about this new card we're considering adding to the deck? And then building upon that and making sure that I'm giving people credit. But, you know, as far as like continuing to see more cards like ours in the space, you know, spreading the word. I know people say that, but what I mean is a tip that like people use in the drink industry, I want people to start leveraging when it comes to our game. So if I go to a liquor store in my neighborhood and they don't have Sol Mega, I've literally done this. I'll ask the clerk, I'll be like, hey, do you have this beer? And they'll be like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna leave. But actually, can I leave you a recommendation to buy this beer? They're local owned, etc. And I'd love to come back and support your store if you have them in stores. I did the same thing, believe it or not, with Black Girl Magic. The liquor store down the street from me did not have Black Girl Magic wine. And I was like, are you kidding me? But they were super receptive and I wrote down a whole bunch of Black owned wines for them. So all of that being said, when you go to local bookstores, when you go to wine shops that sell games, puzzles, coloring books, and things like that, shoot, when you go to major retailers, be like, hey, do you have like a drinking card game for Black people? And they're going to be like, no. And you'll be like, oh, I'd love to see this game, pull-up card game on shelves. Like I was hoping to buy that today and I'd love to come back and support with that game on your shelves. Word of mouth works. And sometimes people don't know what they don't know. And so every time I've done that in a liquor store, like no one's ever been like, no. They've been like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Thank you for letting me know. So if you could spread the word, leave us 5-star reviews. Because, you know, when people are coming to our website, we have additional barriers where they're like, oh, is this legit? Is this going to be good? So help us out by making sure people have no questions about our game. Let us know how you feel about it in the reviews, submit a card, and spread the word whenever you're shopping to make sure that we are able to build our presence across the U.S. I hope we can get in Nashville soon.
Oh, yeah, definitely. If you need help, slide in, let me know. Put some good ear in. We definitely have some Black-owned, like, little shops and restaurants and things like that. And I'm sure they'll be able to want to put something in there for sure. So like whenever you want to pop in and let me know if anything I can do to kind of like, I don't know the logistics of distribution when it comes to cards. I know a little bit better for beer and wine and alcohol and things like that. So, but like for like cards, games and stuff, I don't know. I have no idea where to even start.
It's a little easier with the small. The barrier is less in my experience with the smaller businesses. So yeah, it's usually like a wholesale order. We put in the delivery because fortunately we don't have to worry about any barriers of, you know, alcohol, tariffs and all of that jazz.
Taxes and stuff.
Yeah, we're just like paper goods. Do you want some? Cool. We're going to ship this over to you. Here's the invoice. It's a little easier with that word of mouth recommendation. So yeah, I'll definitely be DMing you to follow up on some of like your favorite Black owned bookstores, wine shops, you know, shops that are dedicated to featuring Black brands, because we are looking to expand and I'm excited about it. Supporting other Black businesses, especially.
Sure. Yeah, there's some really dope people I could definitely put this in front of. I think would really enjoy this game and things like that. But before I let you go and you get to your Saturday activities, I definitely want to talk about your work in DEI and how the game helps you with your DEI work and vice versa. So it's just like you doing this work. I know it's heavy and it's a lot of heavy lifting. Like I'm not even going to try to like sugarcoat it. It's just a lot of heavy lifting, but it's heavy lifting we need, but it's a lot. How has this game kind of helped you with your work, making sure you implement some sort of fun with you doing work, whether you, well, talk about what you do in that realm, and then we can kind of go from there before I just make assumptions about your work. And she do this, y'all. She's like, I have no idea what that is. Don't call me for that.
Yeah, so I am basically like a workshop developer, if you will, or professional development. I lead workshops on racial equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, anti-racism, whatever you want to call it. But the sessions and the trainings and the workshops that people at my job experience are either designed by me, or I work with like external vendors to lead those opportunities for them. So I haven't necessarily used my game in like my traditional, you know, professional development or workshop, but I have used it with my Black affinity space at work. So we have like racial affinity spaces, so Latinx affinity space, white affinity space, etc.
Have those ERGs.
Yes, employee resource groups.
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity, like within the Black affinity space during homecoming. That was our theme, Black affinity space, homecoming themed. Me and a fellow coworker who graduated from Howard, I graduated from UGA. We co-hosted it virtually and played the game, and you know, good laughs, etc. So that's one way that I've definitely brought my game to the workplace. And shout out to all my coworkers who have supported by purchasing the game. That's been really dope as well.
That's awesome. I know you said you haven't put it in your work. Do you see an opportunity for like these cars to come in when you're doing? Not trying to tell you, girl, you better sell out. No, I ain't saying that. But it's just like, okay, this is what we look for when it comes to just like understanding us. Here's some of the cards I have from the PWI card games. This is kind of how we operate. This is what things look like for us. And not necessarily for them to go buy the game and be like, hey, black employees, here's a game. Okay, bye. Like, but it's like, okay, it's like, this is kind of how they can relate to us without it being weird or awkward. Or it could still be weird and awkward just because race makes everybody weird and awkward, more awkward and weird than they should be. But you know better than I working in that space. Like, have you ever like considered that, or is that just kind of like, sounds great, but it's not really practical?
No, I think anything can be practical if you do it with the right approach. So while I haven't necessarily considered it, I love it as an idea. Like, because we're in a school district that's very education specific, so the next steps wouldn't necessarily lend itself to like bringing out this game. However, in the future, if I were to be doing a training for retailers, people who are working with entrepreneurs, I could definitely see myself bringing in the game. To our earlier point about not only having games be representative, but making sure that the people at the table who are creating the games, and I'm saying games, but it could be a campaign, it could be advertisement, it could be art, it could be building housing, making sure that you have people at the table who are closest to those issues, really informing what you do next. I think that's crucial to make sure we don't have Bath and Body Works candle display. So yeah, I love this idea. Like, I haven't always thought about it, but I feel like there is definitely a way to, connect the two.
Gotcha. Okay. I did crack open another beer. I'm rolling today, baby. But this is actually a beer I collaborated on with a brewery here called Beerded. It's called the Rollout Stout. It's a imperial stout brewed with cinnamon rolls. Yes, actual cinnamon rolls. Because there's a pizza shop here called Slim and Huskies, and they make you know about them. You heard a thing or two. They're not in the DMV area, are they?
No, but they are in Atlanta. Yes. And in Nashville.
Yep. Yeah, they start out in Nashville, and so now they have cinnamon rolls they make. We use their like regular cinnamon rolls. We put it into the beer, so you get like pecans, caramel, vanilla. They put lactose in it, and they mix it with another bourbon barrel aged beer. And so, like, literally, this is breakfast in a can. And the super great thing about it is, like, Beer Dives is like, we're just brewing the beer. Get anybody involved who you want to get involved, which I'll allude to in a second. But, like, with the can, like, other than the beer and stuff inside of it, this is a black-ass can to me. Can art is done by my sister. And so I started the idea for that festival, Bear and Flow. Shout out Dave Bracy for creating a space for us to enjoy beer and be safe about it. But we collaborate with Slim and Huskies and myself, and we donated to Super Money Kids, which is a black nonprofit here in Nashville that helps black children have a healthy relationship with finances, understand money, how it works, how to build wealth and things like that, starting and giving them a chance at financial success. Even before I did, like, I learned a little bit about money as a kid, but like, it wasn't really just out there to me. That's like one of the advantages of going to a private school, but also I understand all my neighborhood kids didn't have access to it. But I still don't have the best relationship with money. But like having this organization with that was really helpful. And so it was like almost a no-brainer. But like we brought that up to the festival. And so it was just like really cool. It was like super impactful, super black, and unapologetically, like the brewery, I was like, we'll make the beer, but like we gonna be over here with it, with everything. Of course, we're gonna promote it because it's still our product at the end of the day. But it's like, right, what you want to do with it, make it shake, and we're gonna be with it till the wheels fall off. And so, yeah, I have a few more left. But that's kind of just what we've been talking about. It's just like that was easy work. You just were in the community 2 seconds, and you came back with a whole nother beer that donated and amplified everybody that was involved on so many different levels. Like my sister's art was throughout the city of Nashville, throughout the city of Pittsburgh, and she made one piece of art, and that can go so far for her. We have it for the money that will be raised. This goes to helping Black children in the community become more financially literate. And we have Black-owned businesses where Black people come into. They see it, they can drink it, they can experience it, and they know that Black people were involved in a genuine and sincere manner. That's enough about that beer. But I want to
That's dope. So your sister does graphic design? She
does graphic design, and she's really good with her hands. She does resin artwork. Shameless plug. So if y'all play Bones at all and y'all need a custom domino set, holler at the work of Rosa, because she makes fire shit. And I'm not saying that because I'm her little brother and she didn't threaten me to promote her. I promise you. If I believe in something, I'm going to talk about it. If I don't believe it, I won't talk about it. I won't disparage it, though, but I won't talk about it. But, she makes super dope things. She makes cutting boards. She makes coasters. She makes different pieces of art.
Work of Rosa. Okay, I'm going to keep that in mind, because if we, make some changes with future packaging, got to keep your sister in mind. Because I think you've posted that beer can on your social before. I've definitely seen it before. You're right. It's dope. She did some great work with that.
And so it's just being able for these white-owned card companies, I don't know what it is, but it becomes rocket science when it tries for them to connect with people that aren't white and privileged like that. It's don't. I always say, in math, you learn KISS, keep it simple, stupid. That's how I operate in that space. It's just okay, you're going to create a card game and you want Black people involved. Get those Black influencers in your city. Whatever they're doing, they could do lifestyle, they could do fitness, they could do beer, they could do card games, they could do food. Bring them in, have a genuine conversation, and give them a piece of the pie that y'all are going to reap the benefits from. Give some money on top of that. Pay them adequately. Don't give them 2% of sales. Give them the 10%, because they're bringing you the information that you can go find or you're going to make up out of the blue. And hopefully it hits amongst the Black people. No, they came in and gave you genuine thoughts. They work for you in the moment. So just make sure you get the money for that and things like that. Kind of just some advice for more PWI Black students. It's just I saw this TikTok and the girl asked, and I kind of struck my eyes for those people kind of going through that, might be struggling a little bit. What are some advices that you have for them to get through this rough patch, this moment for them? Because at the end of the day, it is a moment, but I'll get into that after you. But what are your 3 pieces of advice?
Yeah, so clearly we're on the same side of TikTok. I've seen that TikTok from the girl basically asking just saying it's hard. And it definitely can be hard at times. So if I were to give 3 pieces of advice, it would be to, 1, find the community on campus that you feel safest with. So maybe that's your roommate, and then you all have friends in common. It doesn't have to be a big group of people. It could be your, BSU on campus. It could be the, multicultural office where you hang out. But find your community on campus and focus on them. I would also say, remember that you deserve to be here. And, don't let anyone make you feel like you're having imposter syndrome or make you feel like you're only here because of affirmative action, or anything like that. Like, you deserve to be here. Once again, I keep hitting this home. Like, people have gone through so much for you to be here, to desegregate these universities when people didn't want us to learn alongside their sons and daughters and non-binary folks. So like, don't lose sight of that. And then ultimately, only you know what's best for you. And if it's ever getting to a space where it's unhealthy, and you are not thriving in the way that you need to, it's okay to pivot in whatever way makes most sense for you. So those would be my 3 pieces of feedback. Find your community, no matter how small. Remember, you deserve to be here and don't feed into imposter syndrome. And prioritize your self-care. And if you're not thriving, then it's okay to pivot, and you don't have to feel bad for that.
I know church usually on Sundays, but Liz just took us to church on this lovely Saturday. And literally, like, I can't say anything different other than like advocate for yourself as early as possible. Advocate. Freaking advocate. Like, you're 10 years removed from the school. You advocate for yourself the way you're supposed to, in a healthy way to move things forward. You're going to look back. You'll be like, man, I'm glad I said something when that professor did this. Or I'm glad I said something when this girl did this in the cafeteria. It might seem small to them, or it might seem small, but it could make a big difference in how you operate in the world once you leave college. But like, other than that, like, that's not wrong. It's just like, find your community, believe in yourself, and stick to what I took that, what you're saying, kind of stick to like what's healthy for you. Is like, stick to what you know. Like, it don't have to be exactly what you know, but if you see an aspect of something, you're like, oh, I kind of know what that is. Like, well, let me investigate. And then you're like, oh, wait, whoa, yeah, let me get out of here, and things like that. So, like, I can't say that any more beautifully than that. It's just like, advocate for you and others. That's it. But I always end my podcast before we get into the socials and stuff with what I call is a cheers. I tell people as much to their face as possible, like, about what they're doing, how awesome they're doing, just in case no one ever tells you. The Beerded brother has told you, almost like a big brother, or like kind of like an uncle kind of thing. It's just like, I love what you're doing, Liz, with Pub Games, and being able to really bring PWI students and HBCU students together to have like that connection with each other, and that reminder that we're in this thing together. We are fighting the same battles. We might have a different strategy than you guys, but at the end of the day, we're trying to get to the same victory. We're trying to experience the same justices, the same equity, the equality, the safety, the love, the appreciation. We're all trying to get to the same thing. And you creating this game I think it's going to be the catalyst. I said it on this episode, when it does happen, don't act like I didn't tell y'all, I didn't warn you. But Liz is doing the damn thing, and I really appreciate her. Ever since we started following each other on social media, I believed in her mission and what she was trying to do from the beginning, and I truly appreciate you. And I have, even though we never met, I have a deep respect and love for what you and what you're doing, and I hope that this takes off and is genuinely successful, and we can really change in perception of college. We can really give, like that young lady on TikTok, like, she has these games, she gets her community because of your game, and she can survive, she can not even survive, she can thrive at a PWI and dominate that shit. So when she come back, they're like, oh shit, it's you, what's up? Like, rather than anything like that. So like, I think you're doing that, and I hope to see that down the line. So in 5-10 years, you're the number one selling. I was like, selling game. I'm like, oh, I had a podcast episode with her back in the day. And you don't forget about little old me when you make it big.
Thank you so much. That means a lot because, there are definitely ups and downs to entrepreneurship. You get a lot of different pieces of feedback. You're trying to figure out what feedback to implement, what feedback to say thank you, but, place it to the side. So it gets tough, and so I just appreciate you bringing me onto the podcast. Appreciate, like you said, we followed each other for quite some time and continuing to be supportive of each other. And shout out to you and what you are doing to really make space for true representation and ownership in the beer community. Black folks who love beer. I'm looking forward to coming to Philly to do the Black Beer Festival. I think that's a great idea. And I just really appreciate you making the time to invite me on your podcast, spend, 75 minutes, 90 minutes chopping it up. And yeah, I just really appreciate the affirmation because sometimes that's what entrepreneurs need to keep going when sometimes, the going gets tough. It's not always glamorous. So I appreciate that reminder and that reassurance to keep going. And I want to share that same affirmation with you and everything you're doing.
I appreciate that. Oh, I did forget a question. What does Black excellence mean to you?
Ooh. Because, I've been asking Black alumni this question on Instagram. I feel like what Black excellence means to me is not like a monetary thing. It's not about the amount of money you make. It's not about the amount of things that you accomplish. But Black excellence is being able to be your true, authentic self and people still being in awe of you. People still trying to, do what you're doing, but no one can ever do it like you because it's Black excellence and that it deserves to be celebrated. So, yeah, it's not about the money. It's not about even the degrees. It's not about the houses, but it's breaking generational curses, being your true, authentic self, and people just being in awe of that without you even having to try. That to me is Black excellence.
See, I think you stalking me and my fiance because we literally said the same thing. See, so I think you got. I'm gonna check my house. I think there's a bug somewhere in there. You be listening.
The phones be listening.
Right. I was like, she done figured it out. Oh, what? I might have to get a new phone because you saying everything I've thought and have said and things like that. But anyone that becomes a fan of Lizz of Poet Games, how can they get these card games, keep up with you, just in case you want to send out a Belmont edition of Poet Games or a UGA version? Like, how can people keep up with that, with you, the card game, and even get their own?
Yes. So please follow us on social media at POUP Cards. So POUPCARDS, POUP Cards on TikTok, on Instagram. Please engage with our content when you see us post, engage in our stories and share. We're also available online at poupcards.com. When you log in, you'll get a little opportunity to get 15% off of your first order. And then we are in stores in DC, Maryland, Virginia, New York, and now Missouri. So DC, Maryland, and Virginia, we are at Busboys and Poets, and we are at Nubian Human. If you are in New York, we are at Happy Cork Brooklyn, a dope Black-owned wine shop. And then most recently, we are going to be at the Black Pantry in Kansas City, Missouri. So we are expanding, and it's only because of you all, for you all continuing to support and Black businesses that are, supporting fellow Black businesses. So those are a few ways that you can follow us, grab our cards. And when you do, please leave us a 5-star review, because it's what we need to do to get more people to our website, to trust the product, and to make that purchase.
For sure. So you heard her, poupcards.com. If you're in the DMV area, check out all the areas there where they're selling out of. Engage with the content. Engage. Tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your auntie that got no kids and she thinks she too bougie to come to Thanksgiving. Tell your dog. They might tell somebody, you know what I mean? Like, there's Black dogs in the world that are trying to make it in America and they want some representation too. So tell everybody and everything that possibly could tell something. And y'all already know how to holler at your boy, the Bearded Brother, on all social media. Check out merch, get you a pint glass and things like that. www.thebeardedbrother.com. Breweries, if you want to connect and collab and do different things in the city, your city or mine, it's whatever. And let's work together. Let's bring Black community into craft beer, genuinely. So, as always, grab your friends, grab some good ass beer, hopefully Black owned, but if not, make sure it's delicious. And of course, drink up.